Okay, I just went ahead and started the recording. Um, I think most people are here, but they'll come in as they get here. So let's go ahead and get started. Um, Aloha, hafa day, and good afternoon to each of you attending from Hawaii, Guam, or the mainland. My name is Al Ogata, and I'm the president and CEO of Cyber Hawaii. Cyber Hawaii is a nonprofit information sharing and workforce development organization that focuses on improving cyber resiliency in Hawaii's small and mid-sized businesses, as well as within the community as a whole. We are supported through membership dues provided by the organizations shown here. These organizations recognize the value of improving the cyber resilience of all organizations within the state and are helping to build strong cybersecurity architectures outside of the boundaries of their own networks. We're also supported by strategic partners at the state of Hawaii and by federal agencies such as DHS, CISA, the FBI, Coast Guard, and Secret Service. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar about the human elements of cybersecurity. While many successful cyber attacks exploit vulnerabilities in technology or how technology controls are configured, it's the human element that most often proves to be the weakest link in the cybersecurity chain. Attackers understand this and often go to great lengths to learn about their target's workforce in order to more easily exploit them. In today's webinar, you'll hear about some of the higher risk social engineering methods and things you can do to reduce the chances of your organization falling victim to them. From an administrative standpoint, just a few things. Questions should be entered into the chat window and will be read at pauses in the presentation. This presentation is also being recorded, and the recording will be available on the Cyber Hawaii website in a few days. In addition, the presenter has agreed that you can contact him after today's presentation should you have any questions or need assistance. His email address will appear during the presentation. During this presentation, you're requested to remain on mute unless asking questions during designated Q&A sections. So for today's presentation, your presenter is Giovanni Williams. Mr. Giovanni Williams is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security and Security Agency, CISA, Cybersecurity Advisor, or CSA, for the state of Hawaii and the U.S. Territory of American Samoa. Giovanni is a seasoned cybersecurity subject matter expert with over 2 decades of experience spanning military, private sector, and federal government roles. He currently serves as a cybersecurity advisor for CISA, where he provides strategic leadership in fortifying the national critical infrastructure against evolving cyber threats. He's a certified information systems security professional and a recognized subject matter expert in cybersecurity strategy, risk management, and information security governance. His extensive experience in cyber threat intelligence, incident response, and regulatory compliance makes him a trusted advisor in the field. And with that introduction, I'm going to turn the session over to Giovanni.
Hey, appreciate that introduction, Al, and hello, everybody, and thank you for having me today. Hopefully you all can, hold on, let me fix this. I've blurred myself. There we go. I'll just leave that off. Hopefully you all can hear me well. Give me a second. Let me get my presentation up. So I need to do this. And we'll just do that. Oops. All right. Hopefully you all can see that. Is that good, Al? Can everybody see it?
Yep, can see it. You might want to minimize some of your borders.
I can't even see my borders.
Oh, in PowerPoint, just the PowerPoint, maybe.
Yeah, I
turned.
Here, let me. Is it not going into presentation mode when I click presentation mode?
No, it's still in right now. It's still in the normal PowerPoint session. Yeah, not presentation mode.
All right, give me a second.
Okay.
What about now?
Still not. Yeah, still not in presentation mode.
All right, give me a second.
Wait.
Let me figure out why it won't go into presentation mode. try this one more time.
Okay, now we've got your whole screen.
That's fine. Let's reopen it and try it one more time.
Okay.
Anything different?
Yeah, now you're in presentation mode.
All right. Sometimes you just got to restart it. All right, everybody. Once again, thanks, Al, for the great introduction. Everyone, thanks for allowing me to speak today. So today I will be covering the human element of cybersecurity. I hope to leave you with some questions. We're going to actually discuss some things that you can go back to your agencies to look at. And it's something that's going to lead us into our second session. So with that, hopefully most of you are familiar with the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. If not, we're basically the agency that's been tasked with protecting critical infrastructure. So working with you all in protecting your information systems and your networks. We work with 16 sectors of critical infrastructure. And with that, I'll stop that, and because I want to make sure I cover a lot of the information in today's presentation.
Gio,
Yes.
one quick thing, on your screen, there's a Zoom, a bar showing up. Yep, there you go. Okay, all good. All good.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Al.
Mhm.
All right. All right. So the importance of the human element of cybersecurity. So with cybersecurity, there's definitely a lot of different aspects that you have to consider. But one of the most important ones is the human aspect. The folks who are working in your environments are very, very important assets. Some could say they can make or break you. So understanding things that may occur that could be of concern or risk to those folks is definitely something that we are basically letting folks know that they should definitely be looking at. When I get into technology discussions with a lot of sector partners and just different entities and organizations, a lot of the time, a lot of the technical aspects come up in the conversation as far as like what tools should we be using and this and that. So today I'm going to focus on the human element. And the first key thing I want to point out is that technology alone is not something that's going to secure your organization. The people who work for you, the people who are doing the work for your organizations, they play a critical role in all that you do. And understanding ways that they could be taken advantage of or manipulated or be exposed or expose your risk to others is highly important. So as I've covered the first bullet, attackers, they often exploit humans rather than technical flaws. Sometimes it's a lot easier to, meet someone, talk to them, get to know them, befriend them, and get them to do nefarious things. We've seen it in the past in quite a few incidents. There's some definitely some examples, some huge examples of this, and I'll talk about them later in the briefing. But definitely, getting hands on keyboard can sometimes be a lot more effort than just getting to know stuff about someone and ways that you can manipulate them to do things that may be of a lower scale to accomplish your goals. All right. So today we're going to talk about understanding and mitigating the human risk and how those risks can significantly reduce your security incidents. For those who know me, I talk a lot and I give a lot of briefings. And the main thing that I talk about is understanding the basics. The first thing you should always do when you go into a new organization or within your organization and your role is you should always baseline your environment. And I'm going to talk more about that in the briefing as we move forward. But baselining your environment can help you tremendously in understanding these human elements of cybersecurity. So when I was talking earlier about people being manipulated, the next topic of discussion we're going to talk about is social engineering. And you may ask, what is that? And for those who aren't familiar, I'll read the definition. Social engineering is the psychological manipulation and exploit of a human error or weakness rather than technical or digital system vulnerabilities. It is sometimes called human hacking. Um, there's so many different ways to do this. I'm going to cover some of the ones that are known, that have been used in recent exploits, um, and I'm going to go into details of ways to hopefully mitigate some of those things. But definitely understand that this is an adversary getting into those human folks who work for you, getting into their brains and manipulating them to do nefarious things. Um, Human hacking. You're not going through ones and zeros. You're not on no keyboard. You're not you don't have to learn how to code to do this. This is all about understanding people, and their motivations, or they're not motivations. So definitely understanding this, is something that can help you in your day-to-day environment. So some of the key reasons why this works, why people are able to be socially engineered. The first one being, there's an authority bias. A lot of people, when they get messages from people in their organization, rather than them question those messages, a lot of them, because it's coming from someone higher up, and they may be, depending on where they are in their organization, or this may actually be you. You say you get an email from your CEO. A lot of people would think first before questioning that. But it's always good to question, just to be like, is that really him? And why would he be sending this? Why wouldn't this be coming from like my boss or my supervisor? So you definitely want to understand, that, some folks are more inclined to reply or to do things when it's coming from a source of authority. Another reason, how people are socially engineered, is there's this creation of urgency and fear. Sometimes there's a lot of things going on in people's lives. So, an adversary can take advantage of that. In a recent, I don't know how recent that was, but in a recent case that we were working, there was an individual who basically, they had some debt. And if you are in debt, you understand that you want to make sure you pay off that debt. But there's a fear that goes with that, and that was taken advantage of. Some people told him that we can give you some money so that if you do this for us. So that was a motivation in that case, where that individual did some malicious things to take advantage of the money because he feared the debt and he wanted to make sure he paid the debt. So just understand that those motivations, the authority bias so far, and the urgency and fear that attackers can create. That those are what pressures the victim into doing things without considering the ramifications. Another thing is, a lot of the times when I was telling you earlier about the human elements and how these social attackers will move, is that they'll befriend you. You never know. It could be a colleague you've known for years, or it could be someone you've met recently, and they're basically just kind of building up to it. Eventually, they may get to a point where they ask you like, hey, what about this? And because they built that trust with you and that familiarity, you may be more inclined to maybe tell them something that you probably wouldn't normally tell someone because they're not close to you, or you might be willing to do something for them out of trust. It's I don't think it's a topic I'm going to cover today, but I'll bring it up now anyway. Romance scams. That's something that people of different sexes befriend one another, and they take advantage of the opposite one, via that affection. So just be aware this can happen, with a friendship, with relationships, or any of that sort. All right, so here's basically a diagram of how the social engineering cycle works. It always starts with information gathering, also known as reconnaissance. So that's the person getting to understand the individual or the target, getting to understand them so that they can better know how they can use those manipulative tactics in order to get that person to do whatever it is they need to do, or maybe it's in one of the different examples that I'm going to go over later. Maybe it's a way of them, getting an understanding of someone so that if they send them something, they can get the type of response that they need. The second part is the relationship. That relationship could come, like I said, it could be an affection relationship. It could just be a friendly relationship. It could be a work relationship. There's different aspects of the relationship building process that could be used to basically kind of manipulate the individual in a social engineering attack. Once they have all the information they need and they've built the relationship and the trust, and they've identified whether it's going to be kind of a authority biased, or it's going to be a fear kind of thing, or however they're going to manipulate this person, that's when they start the initial phases of the exploitation. That's when they'll start to either ask those questions, or they'll start sending maybe some emails, text messages. Maybe they'll start calling, and then they'll start building up to the actual execution of the attack. Whether that be, maybe they're getting some type of monetary gain, maybe they're getting some type of information. There's just all different ways that the individual could be manipulated as a social attack. All right, so I'm going to go over a couple of the different social engineering types. You may be familiar with some of these, and some of these have led to some of the most significant cyber attacks within the last 10 years. So the first one is phishing. Hopefully you all are familiar. If you're not, what a phishing attack is basically people receive fraudulent emails or messages, or they get a link to a malicious website, and the website is designed to trick them into revealing sensitive information, or it might be to click on the link so that some malware is executed, or to provide more information so that the social engineering attack could get that within those two phases, the information for the reconnaissance. So phishing emails prevalent, like over 90% of all the attacks have this component as a part of the attack. So this is a huge thing to make sure that you're aware of, that you're educating your workforce on, because it is used quite often. It is a part of basically the attack framework, as far as like it's an easy way for folks to get in. Another social engineering type is vishing, also known as voice phishing. This is someone who is impersonating, a high-ranking person in a business, an employee. It could be a loved one. I don't know. You maybe get the call from the Nigerian prince. Who knows? But it's basically a phone call, and that person is using voice in that relationship to kind of manipulate. The next engineering type is smishing, or also known as SMS phishing. This is the use of text messages. If you have a cell phone, and pretty much everyone does these days, you get these weird text messages from all over the place. Some you may know who they are, some you may not, but there's links involved. There's phone numbers. There's like, call this number, and they're just sending these messages to get to you so that they can try to social engineer you. The other type is business email compromise, and this is kind of a part of the attack surface when we're talking about phishing, and getting someone to click on a link or getting someone to provide information. Usually they'll send that email. The person will click on that link, and from that point, maybe they initiated some type of malware or some type of keylogger or something. It could be multiple things, but then at that point, their email is compromised, or it could be compromised, and then the information is being sent back to the malicious attacker, who is still gathering reconnaissance, and they're using that email compromise to basically kind of move throughout the environment to to either get to more administrative privileges or to get to bigger fish, which we call white whaling. Maybe they're trying to get up the chain of command within an organization to get to like a CEO or someone on an executive level so that they could do other things with accounts and money, etc. And the last one I want to talk about this one isn't a technical one, but it's one folks should be definitely aware of. This is more of a physical security type of engineering attack, but I wanted to kind of bring it forth because I've seen it a lot when I visit critical infrastructure partners. There's a lot of tailgating and piggybacking when it comes to entering a facility, and especially within certain areas. You definitely don't want people just kind of letting other people into certain areas unless, hopefully you have a badging system or some sort of way to identify that person actually needs to be there. Because I've seen people just wandering areas and like, how do they get here? Or do they even belong here? And the person's like, no, I'm lost. So definitely wanted to bring that up. You definitely want to implement some strict physical and digital access controls, whether that be a badging system that is digitally integrated into your environment, or it could be like, just a badging system where, a physical person could identify like, hey, this badge is blue, so this person is allowed in this area or not, So those are some engineering types that you definitely want to be aware of. Like I said, within the phishing, it is one of the most common things used in this day and age to get into an organization to do more nefarious things. All right, so here are some indicators that you can look at when basically trying to qualify if what you received is something legit or not. So one, when you're looking at, say, an email, especially an email, check the sender. Who did the email come from? And now you know that now because of like hyperlinks and just different tools, sometimes the email address itself can be masked. So you want to make sure that you can hover over it most of the time, the little hyperlink, the little blue email thing that says like a group instead of like the actual email address. You can kind of just mouse over it and it should show you the email address. Or if you click on it, it will expand the email address. So you definitely want to check the email address itself to make sure that it is coming from someone that you are familiar with or someone that your organization is familiar with. Check the sender's address. If, say, for instance, if you're paying a bill, you want to make sure your bill is coming from hawaiiantel.com, not hawaiiantel.ru or RS or RM. Make sure that the URL matches the business that you're working with or you're doing business with. Generic greetings and signatures. Usually, if an email starts out like that, I always look at it like it's either a salesman. I probably don't know this person. If you sent me an email and you start with "Dear Value Customer" or "Sir" or "Ma'am," I know I probably don't know you because mostly everyone calls me, something specific, and they'll reach out to me and just be like, "Hey, blah 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 blah." So just understand, build some common, I guess, terminology when designing your greetings. If you're a business and you're working with third parties, just make sure you guys understand how you communicate, especially if there's money being exchanged. Really understand that communication process and have processes in places for checks and balances. The next thing is hyperlinks in websites. As I was talking about earlier, ensuring that the email is correct is one thing. And then if there are any links within the body of the message, make sure that the hyperlink, before you click on it, is going to the right place. And that's another one where you can kind of hover over it with your mouse, and it will show you basically, hey, www.whatever.com.net or whatever. You want to make sure before you click on a hyperlink that it is taking you to the correct place, because if you click the wrong thing, it could take you somewhere, and then as soon as you go there, you're just getting malicious things, on your system, or you've clicked on it, so now you've initiated a protocol. So just be careful with that, and understand that when you're looking at these things. Also, when you're reading through the email message, look for spelling and grammar errors, or just like sentence structure problems, punctuation. There's a lot of different things where, if you're doing business and you're a reputable institution, you basically kind of have a standard, structure in how you give messages. So you want to make sure that you proofread those things, because if there's a lot of like misspellings, or there's a lot of like bad sentence structure. And I'm not talking about Pigeon. I get it. We good here with Pigeon. So just make sure you understand the structure and the grammar within the body, and it's coming from someone that you're familiar with, or that they talk like that. If they don't, then you might want to call them and be like, hey, did you send me this email? Because it's not written like you would normally send an email, just to verify. And then the last thing is, and I always recommend to folks, never click on an attachment until you've scanned it. If you have that capability in your environment, just right click on it and then scan it. Because like I said, even internally, and this has happened in a couple of instances where an internal email was going around. This was after the malicious actors had already did their reconnaissance, and they had already social engineered and fished their way into the environment. Then the actual the employees themselves were sending around an email, and all of them were clicking on it, and no one knew that there was malicious activity within the email already, because it was confirmed. They knew each other. They were supposed to share the email, but no one ever took the time to scan that email. So later on in the investigation, we figured out that email was actually what was allowing the adversary to escalate their privileges very quickly, because it was going to all the right people with the privileges. So just be aware of attachments and be careful with them. A lot of organizations kind of block them, or they have scanning capabilities prior to it coming to your domain. But just food for thought, if you ever get an opportunity and you get it, just right click it. If you have that scanning capability, just scan it anyway, because you never know. All right, so here's an example of a phishing email. So I'll give you a moment to kind of look at it. I've highlighted some things, some key things that you should probably be looking for, as I identified earlier. But definitely when we're talking about right here in this where it says this guy's name, you can't always trust this. That's why I said, like, you can either mouse over this or you can click it, and it should expand it to show you his name is a part. If his name is a part of the domain, his email address should be correct. So if you go into if you click on that and his email address is not like, whatever at, for us, it's CISA.dhs.gov, then I know, like, this did not come from someone in my organization. And then I need to send this to our IT folks to try to investigate, like, what's going on. As you can see, this message was forwarded. So you want to be careful too. If you get a message forwarded from someone, I would just call them and be like, hey, did you forward this to me? Just a checks and balance. And they can tell you, like, it's either yes or no. But it's better to be safe than sorry, because sometimes maybe their email is compromised, and that adversary is utilizing this person because that person is maybe connected to a lot of different folks based on their contact list, and they're using that person to resound out to get to more people. So just be aware of that. And then, as you can see, like, if you look at this, like, it says that, this is I am a staff in the college. Like, oh, I'm sorry. It's very grammatically incorrect, especially if this is a professor. I know, normally our educators are very good at articulating themselves via email. So I would question, like, hey, like, who is this, and why would our professor be writing this? So I would actually reach out, to the med folks and be like, hey, like, does this guy work for you? But that's just me. I'm just telling you what I do, because I've been doing this a long time. But for your awareness, always verify as much as you can. And also, this part right here, this second part, share with me a link for students who might be like, this shouldn't even be like, why are you asking about money in a work email? It's kind of weird. So just be aware. And then, as you can see right here in the signature block, do have a good day. Thank you. No, no name, no contact information. So that's definitely a red flag. All right. So as we talked about, I've identified, what is social engineering, why it works. I've talked about just different types of social engineering that can occur. I've given you an example of a phishing email. So now I want to talk about some of the best practices, and I've kind of iterated on some of this stuff. And when you're going back through these slides later, I've kind of highlighted, just some key words to understand, that'll stick out to you. So when you're back in your organization, if you want to kind of reference this, you can. So the first thing is, unfortunately, you always got to be suspicious. Phone calls, random people visiting you, emails, just weird stuff that you're not. It's not a part of your regular duties, or it just pops up, especially if it's from someone unknown or an individual that is like not directly involved with your company. You just want to be suspicious, ask questions, get clarity, and talk to your leadership, and get them involved. The second thing is, you never want to provide personal information or information about your organization without proper, authority. Before you're giving that information out, make sure that you're authorized to give it out. Most of these organizations have lawyers. Make sure you're authorized to give out that information, and never provide your personal information. And I mean, it's your choice, but it's a good practice to never provide your personal information, especially when it's in accordance to your business. Network information, definitely not, because it could reveal your vulnerabilities. And just make sure that when you are providing this information, that someone in a position of authority that's authorized to allow you to provide this information gives you that permission. You do not want to reveal personal or financial information within email. There are ways to do it, like you encrypt it, you password protect it, but if at all possible, you do not want to do it. Especially within a business, you want to set up a different methodology if at all possible. But if you do, you want to make sure that the email is encrypted via digital signature, and also that it is password protected. You will get the spam emails. Everybody knows them. Ignore them. Send it to your filter. Let your IT people know so that they can add rules to block it. But you never want to respond to those email solicitations, and never click on links in emails, especially if you're not familiar with them. And even the ones you're familiar with, like I said, do the hover process just to check it out, to make sure that the URL is going exactly where it says it should be going. All right, don't send sensitive information. We talked about that kind of earlier, before checking that the place that you're sending it to also has the proper security. So for businesses or organizations, just make sure whoever you're doing business with, they are properly protecting whatever information you're sending to them, whether that's customer information, pay information, whatever it is that's important to your business. If you're sending it somewhere, make sure that person can properly, or that organization can properly protect the information in a way that is aligned with your business. Otherwise, you run the risk of, if they get compromised, your information or your customer's information will be compromised, and then that can kind of lead back to you. So you want to be careful. Pay attention to the URL always, or the uniform resource locator of all websites. And if they're secure, they should begin with HTTPS rather than HTTP. And then look for the padlock on the URL thing to make sure that the information will be encrypted when it's being sent. You do not want information to be sent in clear text, because if it is, then someone could get it, and if they get it, then they can use it. All right. If you're unsure whether an email request is legitimate, like I said earlier, please try to verify it with someone in the company that has the authority that can get that done for you. Do not use contact information provided on a website, especially if you don't know if it's legit. Don't contact it until you can verify otherwise. And check previous statements for contact information about known phishing attacks. There's a link on here that you can click on. It's the anti-phishing working group, and they have so much information on phishing and attacks that happen throughout the nation, and it's a good resource for folks if they have questions, or if they have an example. They can go there and look to see if what they're getting is legit or not. Also, you want to install and maintain antivirus software. That's what I was talking about earlier. If I said, you right click, scan the file, so that you can make sure it's good to go. Firewalls, you definitely want to have boundary protection, so your firewalls can keep a lot of malicious things out of your environment, if they are configured properly and they have the right protocols and services. And then email filters, we were talking about that earlier, as far as talking with your administrative folks to make sure that they can block certain types of traffic. I put a link in here for folks, if it depends on the size of your business. So if you are a small business, this is a good link for you to understand, like home and office, kind of like the smaller firewalls that you can use to protect your business. If you don't have like thousands of computers, you have just like a small footprint. This is a good document that can help you understand that. And then protecting against malicious code. That's another resource that folks can click on to go to. It's going to take you to CISA, and it'll take you to just some documentations on understanding against malicious code, so executables and things of that nature. And then the last thing, reducing spam. When we were talking about the domain, that's something that your admins could do. There's like lists that already exist where you can kind of plug those into your filters, and it'll just automatically block some of the known stuff. And then last but not least is if you can take advantage of any anti-phishing features offered by your email client and your web browser. So I know that if you're using like Office or MacMail, there's definitely some built-in features. And then also web browsers, if you're using Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge or any of those web browsers, Opera, I don't know, there's quite a few. They have some built-in functions. And the last thing, and this is one of the most kind of important speed bumps to really understand when dealing with social engineering, is it's harder to compromise someone when there's multiple factors that someone has to go through in order to get stuff done. So we talk about multi-factor authentication. That's basically something you have, something you are, something you can do, or like there's just multiple factors that you can do in order for someone to get something done. So right now, a lot of folks use username and password, but you want to add another factor to that. Maybe you use username, password, and then a token, or maybe username, password, and maybe biometrics. There's different ways that folks can do this multi-factor authentication for their organization in order to best protect them. So with that, I want to pause for a second to see if there's any questions so far, because I've talked a lot. I can keep going, but I just wanted to pause for a second to see if there's any questions. And I can't see the questions, Al.
Yeah. So I'll read them out, but I'll give folks a chance. If anyone wants to verbally raise a question, go ahead and unmute yourself and raise the question. If I don't see anything, there's a couple things in the chat that we can start with.
This is Belle from Saipan. Can I ask question. I think I asked it on the chat.
Sure.
I was just wondering, is it a common practice for bad actors to compose their email with incorrect grammar? Is that a common practice for them? And I was just wondering why, or we're assuming that those email come from non-English, or the English is their second language, or is there any reason why is it like that?
So it's in the past, ma'am. It has been because there malicious actors come from like all different countries. They're not just English speakers. There's some from all different countries, and that was something that we noticed in the past. Like if they were coming from external to the United States and they're trying to do attacks in the United States, that some of the grammar was incorrect. But now, with artificial intelligence, these actors have gotten a capability where now it's not as common, but some folks who are still taking advantage of some of the old things that are out in the dark web, they still pop up every now and then. But now with artificial intelligence, it is a lot more difficult to detect those types of those incorrect grammar and things like that. But even with AI, there's a methodology now where folks can kind of see, like, they can tell if it's been written by a human or not. So it's still evolving though. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, thank you. Just to follow up, just one more. So with the evolving AI technology, I noticed that AI usually have a pattern on how it write things. It's really every time you ask a question, it uses the same, the same um, what do you call this, vocabulary most of the
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
And usually it is referencing a journal or a newsletter or stuff like that. Is there any besides, email addresses and how they introduce themselves or how they do the greetings, is there any commonality on these phishing emails that we should be aware of, besides those common things that we always see, that you can see or that you can predict, maybe?
No, ma'am. As far as common, no, I would say because a lot of the times when the attackers are doing the attack on, let's say, your organization, it is very tailored in its approach. They are focusing in on your organization, so they're gonna, like I said, they're gonna learn you. They're gonna learn the folks in your organization, and they're gonna tailor it to you. So every time we get one, it's different. Now, when it comes to the technical aspects, a lot of those are the same as far as like escalation of privileges, executing malware, and things like that. Those follow a common guideline, but the actual, I guess, the design of the phishing email or the messages that are used or the manipulation of the folks, it's all very different each time, and it's very tailored.
Yeah.
Thank you.
From a very simplistic standpoint, that as Gio mentioned, the methodologies and the approaches they use are varied and they're getting more sophisticated. One of the very basic common characteristics of any of these messages is they typically ask you to do something, whether it's to download a file or pay an invoice or connect them with someone else in your organization. So in some senses, when you get emails, even if they appear to be someone that you know, and they're asking you to take an action, things like paying invoices, clearly that should raise a few, hairs on your neck and a little suspicious. And, these guys are getting better at covering their second tier in a sense that they may be spoofing a follow-up by spoofing your CFO or something like that. And then also to the technical controls that Gio mentioned, like email filters, spam filters, if they're asking you to download a file and your IT folks have set up filters for the emails, looking for malicious packages, you'll have some protection there. But even if you think it's okay and you download something, always scan it before you open it up. Always scan it before you touch anything. So yeah. So go ahead. Was there another question or comment? Okay, sorry, I thought. Gio, did you want to add anything or?
No, the last thing is when we were talking about the execution of malicious files. One thing they've gotten savvy at is they'll say, "Oh, well, this file is going to flag as a virus, but go ahead and accept it." So don't do that. Don't do that.
That's great.
All right.
I'll actually, Gia, I'll mention we do have one question. This came in from Corwin. For the dark web, I've been wanting to put resources in that area to to to, to get that awareness or raise awareness. Um, can you set me up with resources to do it as safely as possible? So basically,
Um,
he's asking for
we
access to the dark web.
Yeah, so we can't set you up. That one's hard. I'm trying to think of the best way to answer it. There's definitely some of my federal partners that could possibly work with you in order to get you an understanding of that environment, because it is a very interesting environment. But yeah, I can't tell you right now like a way that we can set you up. It's something that we can inform you on, but we can't like set it up for you, if that makes sense.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. No, it's a question I try to push whenever a chance I get, but thank you. I do understand it's a hard one. Even when I try to look it up myself, it's like I can't really get a definitive this is the safest way to do it. But I'm very interested in doing that because it feels like such a big blind spot for us. And if there's anyone out there like that could work with me to figure that out, I'd really appreciate it.
All right. Definitely reach out to me, and I can kind of follow up with you with that. All right.
Thank you.
Questions?
No, I think we're good. We can keep going.
All right. So the next topic of discussion is we talked about social engineering and how it works, and what are the things that happen, some best business practices. Now I want to talk to you about a malicious insider, and this is not someone who's been socially engineered, or it could be, you never know. But this is someone that is, as you can see, an employee, a contractor, or a business partner, who may, I don't know, maybe no longer happy, or they've got different motivations, but they want to misuse their access for either personal gain or to harm your organization. And we've seen a lot more of these lately, in just in the sphere. So want you to be aware of them. They can be motivated by financial gain. So as I was talking to you earlier about the guy who was socially engineered, he owed the debt. So he was socially engineered and he became a malicious insider. So he was providing information to someone, and he was getting money for it, to pay off the debt, but he kept doing it. So just understand that this is another aspect of understanding the human parts of your employees, is that they could be taken advantage of, or they could take advantage of you. So like I said, employees, contracts, business partners, they can be motivated by financial gain, revenge, coercion, or ideological reasons. All right, so here's some examples. Biggest one, I'm pretty sure everyone's heard of this guy, Edward Snowden. He stole a lot of information from the U.S. government and he leaked it online. He just ideologically motivated. He felt like there was things that he saw that he didn't agree with, and he took a lot of information and he put it out there. At the company Tesla, there was an insider sabotage where an employee altered the code in the manufacturing process, and leaked sensitive data about the process and how things are made. And then I was a victim of this one, the third one, the Marriott data breach. An insider, they access guest records, and they expose the information and customer details for over 5.2 million folks. So when I got the letter, they were basically like, yeah, they got your credit card information. They know every hotel you stayed at in the last like 10 years. Like, it was some scary stuff. So just be aware. This is something that, you know, you have to be aware of, because at any time, you never know, you know, an employee might go rogue, and your business will be left having to deal with some of this stuff. And some of this stuff costs a lot of money to basically mitigate. Or, you know, some of these companies, they lost, you know, public influence, their credibility. So definitely be aware. It could be a huge risk in an environment. So some indicators and things that you can do to detect. So one, you want to, and I talked earlier about baselining your environment. The reason why you want to baseline your environment, and when I'm talking about baselining your environment, I mean, you want to know your environment ins and outs. If someone plugs in a mouse, I'm being weird here, but if someone plugs something into your environment, you want to understand it. You want to know it. Like, oh, someone plugged in a hard drive. Like, is that hard drive? Like, where'd that hard drive come from? Or someone connected a new PC, and that naming convention of that PC is not something that I'm aware of. Or what is this piece of hardware that's on this system? I know it's not on the approved hardware list. Or excuse me, what is this software that's on the system? I know this software is not on the approved software list. Or, you know, the computer they bought, like, where'd they get it? Like, we only have, you know, these types of computers. So you want to make sure that you understand your environment, because it makes it a lot easier to detect anomalies and analogous behavior. So unusual access patterns, employees accessing data that they normally don't use or do not have access to. How can you detect that? Like I said, by understanding your environment, you know, and having great policies and procedures in place that basically stipulate, you know, if you have employees and they're working certain shifts, understand, like, you know, the time frames your employees work. So like, I know that employees in this section, they work from this time to this time. So if I see someone working at, you know, 23:00 dark 30, and I know there's no big push from any project, like, why are they working at that time? And why are they by themselves? Why is the rest of the office not working with them? So these are patterns you can detect within your environments, you know, if properly baselined, and having that awareness in the tools. The second thing is frequent policy violations. So I worked for an organization, and there was a guy he was on the networking team, and he was constantly doing things that were flagging event logs and auditing logs and things of that nature. So no one paid any attention, but I kept seeing it. So I had someone conduct an audit, and after the audit was done, he was installing malicious software in different locations. And when we finally got him to security, and, you know, we were just, you know, he kind of gave up, and he kind of broke down and was like, you know, we asked him why he did it, and, you know, he was just like, oh, well, I was gonna leave, and, you know, in case I ever needed to get back in. So his motivations were self, but, you know, he showed that pattern of just constantly doing things that he wasn't supposed to. He wasn't accessing sensitive data, but he was accessing other systems that he probably shouldn't have been accessing, especially in his role, in his capacity from his job. He should have only been doing things of a networking nature, maybe doing config files and things of that nature. Installing software is something that's kind of different. So definitely understanding your environment can help. And then behavioral changes. The example I just gave, the guy gave no behavioral changes. His behavioral changes was in his work and what he was doing, what we were able to detect. But like, as far as like my explanation, disgruntled employees expressing resentment or financial distress or just stress. Sometimes you won't see those, but if you do, it might warrant your, I wouldn't say intervention, but it might warrant just a touch point, just to kind of maybe have your manager or supervisor or someone, just have a discussion with that employee to understand what's going on before it becomes a problem. All right. Here's some best practices when it comes to malicious insiders. And we talked about baselining before, and a lot of this aligns to that. So the first one is you always want to have a zero trust architecture. And what I mean by that is you want to limit access that your employees have to your environment. And I know some of you got employees that may have like 15 jobs, but in that, it's okay. It's okay to do that, but you want to separate out those jobs in the way that the employee accesses them. And the reason is because, like I was saying, when it comes to baselining and auditing, it will make a lot of more sense when you're actually trying to understand what happened. So if you're familiar with separation of duties, so you want to separate the duties based on the roles in the organization, and you also want to have role-based access controls, meaning if the networking guy is in the IT sphere and the HR guy is in the business sphere, they have different roles in the organization, and the HR guy doesn't need access to the networking stuff, and the networking guy doesn't need access to the HR stuff. The networking guy may need access to like switches or like a router in the HR comm closet, but he doesn't need access to HR files and folders. That could be managed by someone else, or if your organization is small and collapsed, still you kind of want to make sure that you understand like who those folks are responsible for and what they're doing. The next thing is user behavior analytics. This can be AI driven, and I put AI driven because it's new. It's something that's becoming like a lot of industry folks are starting to use AI to detect a lot of this anomalous activity. But there's still a tried and true method of doing this. Like I said, one, baseline your environment. Two, if you understand your environment, you will be able to see these anomalies when you're doing your regular kind of vulnerability management tasks, as far as reviewing logs, doing analysis. You'll be able to see stuff. You'll be able to see IP addresses. You'll be able to see times when people are logging in. As long as you're logging, you'll be able to see these things. So it's still very, very simple to detect. If you, like I said, if you have established that zero trust architecture with the separation of duties and the role-based access control. The third thing, this is like, I've seen this in a lot of organizations, and it can kill you, or your organization. And I don't mean like murder, but I mean like it could be a huge risk. It could be something that ends up costing you a lot of money. If you don't have a good exit and termination process, and when I say that, I'm talking about like, maybe one of your employees retired. You still have to take them through the process of making sure that all their privileges and everything they had access to, it gets removed, because that person is no longer an employee. That's an exit. That's a good exit. But still, you still want to make sure that those folks who exit, maybe someone got into their job, or they're moving on, or they're moving to a different state. You want to make sure that those employees, when they exit your organization, that you process them accordingly. You remove their accesses. You make sure you kind of do that process and kind of push them along. And then, especially important is if you have to terminate an employee. So if you have to terminate an employee, this is the all more important, because more than likely, if you're terminating someone, it's usually for cause. Maybe that's poor performance, or it could be for, maybe they made a mistake. Who knows? But when you have to terminate someone, it is that much more imperative that you make sure that you remove their accesses, because you never know how that employee may feel about that. And they might become a malicious insider. They could become a social engineer and try to get back in. So you want to make sure other people are informed that they're no longer a part of your business. So there's a lot. So just make sure that when someone exits or is terminated, that there's an immediate revocation of their access to everything they had access to because they no longer an employee. They don't need it. And that you can get them along the way. And the last thing is regular security audits. When I was talking about the example earlier, I had a weekly stand up with my team when I was a CISO to do these audits. We did it every week, and it was because we had Microsoft Tuesday. So every other week we had Microsoft Tuesday. So we within our configuration management plan, we were doing this, and our vulnerability management plan was doing this as well. So definitely doing those audits to make sure that one, accesses and privileges are always maintained. I can tell you right now, in my organization, there was one domain account. Twice there was more than one, and I fixed that very quickly. But there's always only one account that has domain level admin privileges, never more than one, because the domain level admin account is usually not audited. So you never want to have more than one person who has the keys to the kingdom. Two, any other accounts, privileged access accounts, systems accounts, those accounts, I'm constantly monitoring them, making sure that they're still needed. Not just there. Like if they're just there and they're not needed, then why? Like we need to get rid of it because it could be a blind spot in the future. So just make sure that you're always monitoring and doing security audits, and that'll help you in detecting if you have a malicious insider or you have someone who's gotten into your environment without permission. If they're trying to do escalation of privileges or they're trying to access data or they're trying to exfiltrate data, you'll see it as long as you're doing those in monitoring. All right. Before I move on to the next topic again, I want to open it up to see if there was any questions about malicious insiders.
Let's see. I have in the queue. Could we have one on? Let's see. For user behavior and analytics, is there a manual process I can implement as a build up to make the case for AI-driven tool?
Depending on your environment, yeah, it's possible. It's definitely possible. I would have to know a little bit more about like what you're doing now, and your current resourcing to make a proper case, but it's possible.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Corbin again. So right now it's as far as behavior, it's mostly subjective. Like it's kind of hard to say like that's anomalous behavior. People stay back for like when they're doing overtime, and it's kind of hard to make a case for doing any kind of investigation into that kind of thing if because otherwise it might look like you're kind of picking on people like, oh, why are you focusing on this versus focusing on another cybersecurity priority? And so it's like, but if there's an AI tool, is there like you mentioned audits, but there was something that kind of triggered that audit. It seemed like you made a kind of a cursory like a look around and notice something, and then that triggered your audit. But still, like even in that case, it kind of might seem like you're just choosing someone to pick on, right? Like I don't, I guess I'm asking for like something I can kind of formalize that might help me build up to just offloading this to a tool eventually.
No, and maybe I should explain. So when I first got to that organization, it was very important for me to kind of canvas out other departments. So I had a good relationship with the HR folks. I had a good relationship with each of the different departments within the agency, and I basically let them know like, hey, like here's what's happened in the past. Here's my plan on where I'm going. So here's what I'm going to be looking at, and it might cross over into your realm. And if it does, then I'll come to you and be like, hey, so like I saw this guy working at like this like 4 a.m. on on a Saturday. Like, is that normal? Like, I'd ask them before I go into like the whole security and getting the cops and stuff. I would talk with my other department heads or the people who were responsible for those individuals, to understand like, hey, did you tell that guy to come in here on Saturday and work till 4 a.m.? Like, is that normal? And they could let me know, like, hey, yeah, maybe we're doing this project, or the CEO or someone within the organization directed us to do this. So it's definitely a team and an organizational effort. Like I said, I have to know a little bit more about your organization, and then I can kind of help you kind of tailor that so that you can, if that is something that you're looking towards, it's definitely something we can work on.
But I think yeah, Corin, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, but to Gio's point, I think a lot of the best cybersecurity teams are really that, they're teams, and bringing in and partnering with your HR folks, and even your legal services, the attorneys, in advance of something happening. So as you look at tools, as you look at methods, talk to them and try and explain to them, well, this is the kind of thing we'll find, this is the kind of thing we'll see. What do you guys need to say? Make a successful employee action. What does someone like legal services, the attorneys have to see to be able to protect the company in the event of a legal action, and then there's blowback, like a wrongful termination type situation. So I think part of your work is on the technical side, but then part of it's also on the internal team building side, to reach out to other departments in your organization and build that bridge. So what you're building is a common solution. So I'll offer that up.
Thank you. No, those are both what you just said and what Giovanni mentioned. That's what I needed. It's because I guess I was considering it like more my job kind of thing, but at some point, if there is conflict, I do got to bring it up and go together with, like you said, HR legal. And no, that makes sense. So I just got to identify what I want to look out for, like the threats I'm trying to pinpoint, and then kind of build like a process that I kind of pitch to the team, and then we work together, basically. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions, Al?
No, that was it. Actually, administrative question, asking if presentations will be sent to attendees. The answer is yes. We'll be sending you the presentation. So, okay, yeah, Gio, back to you.
All right. And I'm sorry, I just glanced at the time. I can't see it while I'm speaking, but
You-
if I'm over too much, Al, just let me know. I'm going to try to crush the rest of this.
Yeah, we're running a little over today. So if anyone has to go, just be aware that we will send you a follow-up email about the second session, so you get more details on that. So if you do have to step away, feel free. But if you can hang in there, there's a lot of good stuff coming. So hang in if you can. Okay.
And I apologize to everyone. I'm going to crush the last part of this. The last part of this is very simple. So we're going to talk about criminals, cyber criminals to be specific. As you see, there's a picture on here. We got hack division to warfare and everything in between. So this can be organized crime, individuals who target organizations for financial gain, disruption, espionage, and they don't care how large or small the businesses are. I have a slide on here that talks about their motivation. Of course, cyber criminals want money, but this graph, it could be all over the place right now, because of the fact that there's some nation states that are hiring cyber criminals to take advantage of folks for geopolitical reasons or ideological violence. So take this with a grain of salt, but this is kind of like the starting point to understand where these threat actors are coming from and what's usually their motivations. Sometimes those motivations can be unique, and that's where Cyber Hawaii, your partners, your federal partners, your private sector partners can come in to help you understand a little bit more. All right, some best practices to prevent these cyber criminals. We talked about multi-factor authentication earlier. Definitely want to implement that in your environment if you can. If not, there are some other methodologies that you can use, but like I was saying, like it's difficult to recommend technologies or specific things without understanding your environments a little bit more. It's easier to tailor it to your environment. So we can talk about that a little bit in the second session. Next, you want to subscribe to some type of cybersecurity intelligence or information sharing platform. Cyber Hawaii is one, InfraGuard's one, the Coast Guard AMSC is one, CISA's one, FBI. There's so many. You want to get information from these people, as many people as possible. The more information, the better. If you can handle it, definitely want to get as much information as you can to help you prepare. You want to develop and you want to test your incident response plans or your emergency action plans or your active shooter plans. Any plan that you have, if you are not testing it, then it's don't wait till it's too late. You want to test those things before something happens to identify, lessons learned, things that you can improve upon to make your plan better. I've seen people who make a plan and then they let it sit for 4 years and then they try to like do it and then it doesn't make any sense because 4 years ago their company ran a certain way, but it no longer runs that way. So you definitely want to do this on a reoccurring basis as much as possible. You want to limit the ability of attackers to move laterally through your networks. That's what we talked about: separation of duties, role-based access controls, multi-factor authentication, understanding your environment, baselining, limiting your technologies, limiting your software so that you understand exactly what's in your environment. It makes it a little bit more difficult to do those things. And you want to make sure you're encrypting all sensitive data, both at rest and in transit. So, and you want to, if as much as possible, you want to understand where your data is going and how it gets there. All right. What to do if you think you're a victim? So the first thing, you want to initiate your response plan. If you don't have one, I'm going to tell you about that in the next slide. But if you don't have one, you need to get one. It doesn't have to be like this intricate, super verbose thing. It just needs to be something that's written down that can be shared, that everyone in your organization can understand and work together to make sure that it's accomplished. You keep it basic. It should tailor your organization. You don't have to have this like 800 page this 800 page document for an incident response plan if you only have like a certain amount of employees. It doesn't make sense. So you want to make it as realistic as possible. If you believe you might have revealed some sensitive information about your organization, report it. Report it. You can report it to IC3. You can report it to myself. You can report it to Cyber Hawaii. If you're comfortable reporting it to us or anyone, just report it so that you can have someone investigate it to see if it's suspicious or it's malicious or whatever. So if you believe your financial accounts may be compromised, you have to contact your financial institution immediately. And you want to make sure that with whatever accounts those are associated with, you got to get those flagged and looked at. And in this case, I would definitely contact law enforcement if it's financially involved. Please let us know. We can reach out to Secret Service. They'll help you out. Always immediately change passwords if you think they might be revealed or compromised. Try not to use the same password for multiple resources if at all possible, and then make sure you change it for each account. If you get a new hardware system and the password is admin123 and you don't change it, you set yourself up for failure. You always want to make sure that you change those passwords when you're implementing new technology or new things into your environment. Watch out for other signs of identity theft. We have a document on it, preventing and reporting to identity theft. For more information, you can get that document at cis.gov, and I'll have the link in there. And then you want to consider reporting the attack to the law enforcement and file a report with the FTC if at all possible. So now we're going to get into some resources and some things for the next session. So the first resource is CISA.gov, our website. It is a very robust information sharing platform. You can go to CISA.gov in the search bar, type in whatever you want, whatever you're looking for. It's going to try to find, if we've done it now or in the past, it'll find some type of documentation to get you in the right direction. So please use it as a resource. It is a great resource and a reference for information. Otherwise, please contact myself or Al, and we got you. So, as we were talking about incident response plans and things that you can work on and things that you want to go back to your organization to evaluate as far as the human element, because we're focused on the human element right now, social engineering and attacks, and also malicious criminals. These are resource guides. Within these guides, there are templates for things like if you go through the asset management, you can go through there and it'll tell you how to manage your assets, how to get your organization to a point where you only, you understand it, you've baselined it. The asset management resource guides can help you implement that. Say, for instance, you need an incident response plan. There's a template in the incident management resource guide for a plan. Now, that template is long, but within that template, there are instructions that basically kind of walk you through, well, do I need this? What types of organizations normally use this? Does this make sense for my organization? And not only myself, but Al, we can help you kind of go through it and kind of make it tailored for your organization. If you need to know how to do change management, vulnerability management, service continuity, risk management, external dependencies, that's working with your third parties. And the biggest one is what we're doing now, training and awareness, training your employees on these things so that they understand it, or utilizing training platforms to train them as well. And then situational awareness, we were talking about that. So all these resource guides has a ton of information for you to take back to your organization to start evaluating this first topic. And we will be utilizing these resource guides as we move through the next few sessions as we're talking about the different topics of discussion. This is an assessment. I recommend it to any organization. It is a great start. It's not a lot of questions. It's just to focus in on the key elements of cybersecurity and if your organization is doing it. And if they're not, we can make a plan for you to start on that, to start working towards those goals. Exercises. Remember I said you got to test. This is something that we offer. We will facilitate the exercise for you. Bill's in here somewhere. I can't see him right now, but Bill, he's probably linking stuff. Bill is our outreach coordinator. He will help coordinate those exercises with the team so we can test your incident response plans or any types of plans you need help with. We can help you test those. Training resources. We are just kind of like a partner. We have a ton of training resources that can help educate your workforce. But we can also help leverage other types of training platforms with other entities. So the training link is in the description, and you can click on that, and there's so much training. And then just to recap on what we were talking about, we talked about social engineering attacks and how they rely on psychological manipulation. We talked about malicious insiders and how they pose an internal risk that require you to do detection and access controls. We also talked about some cyber criminals and how they use various techniques to exploit individuals and organizations. And the last thing we talked about is some awareness and training so that you can go back and start looking at your security and best practices to help mitigate some of these threats. And with that, I will go ahead and have my contact information there, and I will open it up for any questions for the group.
Does anyone have any questions? I know we're running a little long, but I don't see any in the chat right now. So feel free to unmute if you have a question.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Okay, then I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know we're running late. A lot of the material that Gio covered is all extremely important. And that's the reason in our current structure for this year, we'll be having a follow-up session. Basically, Gio gave you a lot of information today, and it's the kind of thing that we want you to think about, talk about, take it back to your organizations and socialize it. And then we want to get back together and really find out, what did you find? Was it wide acceptance? Was there pushback? Were there things that you're already doing? Are there challenges? And that's really the purpose of the next meeting. It's a discussion. It's going to be on March 25th, 2 p.m. Because you're in and attending this first one, you'll receive an email by tomorrow asking about your attendance at the next meeting, along with a copy of the slides. And then basically, you can attend in person. Sometimes it's easier to discuss in person, but I know people are either remote or they might be able to get there that day. So Zoom will also be available. So again, be on the lookout for that email, and then we'll send you an email requesting your feedback on today's webinar. And be aware that we have in our upcoming series our next topic, which will start in April, on identity and access management, zero trust journey, very critical in this area because a lot of hacks take place because of inappropriate privileges, not applying the principle of least privileges, or failing to remove old accounts. So again, lots planned for this year. I appreciate you guys hanging in there. So be ready for the next email, and then we'll see you in a couple weeks, hopefully. So thank you very much. Hope everyone has a great day. Thanks, Gio. Great presentation.
Sorry it took so long, guys. I'm so sorry. I just get so passionate about this stuff.
So yeah, so more to come, and more conversation. So thanks again. Have a great day, and we'll see you in a few weeks, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.